Well, Dr. Deonita Damon is the Executive Director at Boston City Campus. She joins us now. Dr. Damon, good afternoon to you. I really do appreciate the time. Thank you. We have so many young people coming through a schooling system who cannot read properly. They haven't been taught how to read properly. What kind of problems are we having in our education system? They're clearly fundamental.
You're right, Stephen, and good afternoon to you and your listeners and your viewers. I think we need to recognize that we have extreme inequalities when it comes to education in South Africa. It's Shanila Mohammed from Amnesty International that's termed our education as broken and unequal and say that it perpetuates poverty and inequality. And unfortunately, like the professor said, there are schools that are better resourced than others, and for those, arguably, you could say that the quality of education is much better, and the product that comes from that school is a product that's got a better chance in terms of access to further and higher education, as well as other career opportunities. Whereas the child that comes from the under-resourced school, where there's lack of resources, there's poor infrastructure, there's inadequate number of educators, and there's overcrowded classrooms, they unfortunately fall behind. And given the fact that they're already a year or two behind with the COVID pandemic, where they did not have access to alternative learning tools, it puts them back not just a year or two, but it puts them back a generation. In our education system, we've got 18 to 20,000 educators that leave our public schools every year. That's far more than the number of educators that actually enter the system. So we've got a dire need and almost a pandemic when it comes to the number of educators we have in our system.
Within all of this, we spend a very high proportion of our GDP on education. The other thing we spend money on is health. And I mean, I know it's an old question, Dr. Damon, but we don't seem to get the outcome for the amount of money that we're actually putting into it. We are putting immense resources into the system.
But where do we spend the money? Do we spend it on actually retraining our educators to be better equipped to educate? And do we actually put in plans or processes that would allow learners to gain meaningful teaching and learning experiences? Because still it is evident that your learning experience is indicative or predicted by where you live, and that is so unfortunate. Because our constitution is great, it makes provision for us to provide the right to equal and quality education, yet we're failing with that dismally. So we're spending in education, but the question is, what are we spending the money on?
There are, of course, a large number of children who are taught to read properly, are able to read full meaning. They do come through the system, they do write matric, and many of them end up in your institution. In your view, are they properly prepared for higher education? Are they able to cope, or are they being prepared properly?
Let's go back to the required pass mark you need to get your grade 12 or your NSC. Therein lies another problem that's very systemic, because they won't get access into your higher education program. So now higher education institutions are faced with trying to reinstill and reteach the foundational and basic elements of education that the person needs. So before they can progress into your degree or diploma program, we have to retrain them. Alternatively, we have to find additional programs to put these individuals in so they can get to a level where they can enter into further and higher education institutions. And I think here we need to take cognizance of the fact that not everyone is going to be able to go to university, so we should look and explore at other alternatives where learners can go into and still get meaningful learning to make them employable.
Are there particular skills we need to concentrate on? I mean, I suppose in the end, reading's the basis of it. I mean, if you can't read for meaning, you're going to battle to find a job.
Most definitely, but there are other skills too. There are artisanal skills. You still have to read and you still have to understand, but there are artisanal skills where you can actually be more hands-on and you can progress and have a meaningful career. But the skills we need to focus on is skills that business needs, because otherwise we're going to train people to become unemployed again. And I think there should be greater collaboration between business, industry of all sectors and all spheres and our educational institutions to say to them, this is what we need and you're not giving us a product that we can use. Hence we can't employ people as fast as we'd like to, or we can't give them workplace opportunities because they're not adequately skilled. We also have a situation where we have graduates that are underemployed because they studied the wrong program or degree, because no one is looking for that anymore. And we should look at future skills, because we are lacking behind in terms of producing adequately future-skilled individuals.
The world's changing. It's all about connectivity. It's all about information and processing information, far more than it used to be. I take exactly what you say about artisans. We have a shortage of plumbers, for example. But we need to prepare children differently for the future. I suppose, to put the question differently, are we at risk of falling further behind?
Well, I think a large portion of our students and our learners, unfortunately, are falling behind because we are still app users. We are not app developers. And if you look at the larger society in terms of global, most of our young people are becoming app developers. So that means we're already falling behind in terms of progressing into 4IR and even going into 5IR, because we started a bit late in terms of equipping our learners and our kids with IT skills. Yes, we've got a lot of people focusing on IT programs now, but it's not happening fast enough and at the trajectory that we need to be on par with our global counterparts.
We have a very large number of young people who are in their 20s now, and they've got very few skills. They wouldn't have received a matric. They battle to get incomes, of course. Is there any hope for them? I mean, I often wonder, I know that there's second chance programs, I know that there are adult education programs, but there's a large number of people who really didn't get a fair chance at school. Is there anything we can do to help them, to give them another chance?
I think sometimes it's access to this information in terms of where people can go to. And a lot of the time, if you have someone that knows a little bit about the skills development space especially, they must get in touch with their sector education training authorities, because they can introduce them to programs that are current. I know that the MICT-CETA is going to have a big drive in trying to get over 1 million African children exposed to ITC. And those are initiatives that hopefully they'll be advertised well enough so that people can have an opportunity to go and reskill themselves in some instances, and people that might have lost their job over COVID can be differently skilled so they can re-enter the workplace. So it is about access to information and finding out where you can go to get into those opportunities, reskilling, upskilling, and maybe differently skilling yourself for career growth.
Dr. Deonita Damon, thank you, Executive Director at Boston City Campus. Really do appreciate the time.